If you ask the gurus how to best perform handheld focus stacks with manual focus lenses, they will likely suggest a couple of techniques, and they will likely end with something like, but it takes a bit of practice to master. And honestly, that triggers me. That triggers me just a little bit. To me, the thought of practicing the same motion over and over and over again, initially failing frequently, then each time getting slightly better, also that one day I could execute it flawlessly like some sort of a robot, that's soul crushing to me. Obviously, we're all wired differently. Personally, I think I'm a creator and a problem solver, definitely not a performer. Now, if you're a performer, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Our society seems to love performers. And if this form of masochism brings you joy and fulfillment, then definitely don't let some guy on the internet tell you how to enjoy your hobby. But if you're like me and think that some boring tasks like focus bracketing are best performed by machines and you're tired of failed shots due to human error, then be sure to keep watching, because there might be options you weren't aware of and maybe they're not as out of reach as they may seem. In the last episode, I built the first version of my automated focus bracketing system for manual focus lenses, and let's just say there was room for improvement. I just knew I could do better. And then my mind started to wander. My desires grew, and my heart filled with the confidence I hadn't yet earned. I decided that I wanted to step away from that built-in-a-shed aesthetic and go for something slicker, something that might not look like it was built by me. So I turned my focus to something that was an inspiration for this project all along, a follow focus system. It's essentially a motor with a gear that is used to rotate the focus ring on a lens, precisely what I need. And the best part about them is they already exist. So I was basically all set. All I needed to do was figure out how to reverse engineer one of these, without having much knowledge of electronics. So I bought this beautiful Tilta follow focus and immediately started tearing it apart. And I quickly realized that I was not smart enough to reverse engineer this, at least not in a reasonable amount of time. So I discarded all of the smart components, leaving only the bare essentials, the mount and the motor, thinking I would just get my own motor driver. I learned that the motor was a 3-phase brushless DC motor, so I decided to buy a motor driver that claimed to be precisely for that, and since the one with the quickest shipping was a pack of 5, that's what I ordered. This thing was going to be so awesome that half of my macro fans would be asking me to build them one, so there was no concern of any of these going to waste. I connected everything up, but unfortunately, no matter what potentiometer I used, the motor driver I got did not allow me to have very granular control over the speed. It was either rotating too fast, or if I managed to get it to slow down, the torque was just too weak. So, what did I do wrong? Probably everything. I didn't know what I was doing. So I ended up doing a little bit more research, and I'll spare you the nerdy details, but essentially these motor drivers are meant for high RPM, so they were never going to work for what's needed here. Sadly, it was time to put my tail between my legs and go back to my caveman ways. This meant, again, using the same DC motor as in my previous build, along with another DPST switch push button for the shutter. This time, however, I knew that I had to do a better job than before. And honestly, that was not a very high bar. Once again, I started attaching the gear to the motor. Since I already invested in 15mm rods and a mount for them, I figured I might as well use them. This time I went for a different motor driver. It was a bit bigger, likely overkill, but I picked it because it already came with wired for 2 buttons, and that's precisely what I needed to be able to easily rotate the motor in both directions. I decided to power the motor with this sweet little 12-volt power bank, which looked really nice until some bug spray got spilled on it. You'll later see what happens to plastic when it comes in contact with DEET. Also, listen to this clicking sound the realists make. It's so satisfying. And the power of this motor, so much power. So at this point I could have kept things very simple. All I needed to do was to tap the DPST switch to the cables of one of those buttons, and the basic functionality is there. It's really that simple. Unfortunately, due to my failure with the follow focus, I wanted to redeem myself and I felt the need to overcompensate, and a simple solution was not going to cut it. I wanted this to work if mounted on either side of the camera to support better configuration on different lenses. To do that, I needed the ability to easily remap the direction the motor rotated when the DPST switch was pressed, so I went a little overboard with connectors. I also found the buttons it came with were massive and did not have a very satisfying feel, so I replaced them with some smaller, nicer ones. In the previous video I went over what a DPST switch is, so I won't go over that again, but this time I really wanted something with a good feel, so I opted with one of those, which happens to be a DPDT switch, which can act as a DPST switch. You just ignore a couple of pins. Yeah, don't worry about it. For connecting and mounting the buttons, I got a little creative again and things got a little bit weird. I could just imagine any electronics engineer watching this and cringing at most of the things I do. In fact, I don't think you need to be an engineer to feel that way. Those of you who have watched last episode know exactly what this blue donut is. There was also this angle bracket that I cut and drilled through. You can probably guess where that's going to go. Then I just jammed all of that in there as forcefully as I could, and look at that. Are you impressed? I hope not, but I do hope you appreciate the color choice to match the button. Let's take a momentary break from all the nerdy stuff and let's imagine some scenarios. For a moment, imagine that you're not a photographer and you're walking through a nature trail and you come across someone taking a photo with their phone. What do you think of this encounter? Absolutely nothing. But then you come across a guy taking a photo with one of these little mirrorless cameras and a small lens, and as wimpy and as basic as it looks, you gotta acknowledge that he's using a dedicated camera, and that's kinda cool. And then some other time you come across a guy with a flash on his camera, even though there's beautiful morning light and he's got some weird plastic cover on his flash, he's really interested in the bushes for some reason. Then he's laying on the ground and bursting his flash uncontrollably. He's definitely up to something. You're at least intrigued. And then on some other day, you walk by a video production and you look at their cameras. There are gears, knobs, rods, connectors, cages, buttons, dials, plugs, external batteries. There are cables everywhere. There are attachments that you don't even know what they do. And immediately it becomes very clear to you that these people are obviously doing work of importance. All those fancy attachments, you know they must be there for a reason. These are professionals. They are creating incredible things. I mean, why else would they have all that crap on there? So I want you to keep all of this in mind when watching the rest of this video, and I think everything will make a little bit more sense. This time around, I ended up finding a nice little box for the motor driver. I was pretty happy with it until I started connecting all the wires up. Started off with the simple stuff, which is one cable going to the battery and the other one going to the motor. For triggering the shutter, I once again took apart an existing shutter release. This one was implemented a little bit differently. It once again had 3 wires. Touching 2 of them would trigger the autofocus, which would not do much with a manual focus lens. And then when all 3 would make contact, it would trigger the camera shutter. I decided to keep the connector and mount it in this little box using some very questionable methods. At this point, with every additional component I had to connect, my frustration levels grew exponentially. After struggling to jam all that stuff in there, it became very clear that the smart thing to do would have been to make a circuit board, but it's not something I had any experience with, so we'll have to put that on the bucket list. It was then time to assemble everything and plug in all of the connectors. Oh, and for that bug spray damage battery pack, that's what it looks like now. Now, if you're observant, you may have noticed that the shutter release cable on this camera is on the right side, and that's also where the hand goes. And I know what you're thinking. I cannot believe this idiot didn't notice the shutter release plug is right on the hand grip. And this is where you're wrong. I'm not some idiot that doesn't notice things, okay? The reason I'm an idiot is actually because I didn't think it was going to be a problem. I have big hands and I thought I could just fit the cable in between my fingers and it would still be fine. I will talk about the ergonomics and usability later. And I should really mention that for most cameras this wouldn't be a problem. They either have the shutter release connector on the other side or they can be triggered wirelessly. Okay, now if we look at the final form, it quickly becomes evident that there is no shortage of cables. There are connectors and we've got plenty of buttons too. If someone came across you holding this on a nature path, there would definitely be questions. Questions they probably wouldn't even dare to ask. We obviously have the shutter button which rotates the lens and triggers the shutter at the same time. Then we have the button which rotates the lens in the opposite direction, which is something you would use after taking a stack, trying to bring back the focus to the original position. And then there's this button that does the exact same thing. This redundancy was not planned, I just added the bottom button afterwards to improve usability. And then finally, we have this other button which makes the lens rotate in the same direction as the first button, but it doesn't trigger the shutter. This way you can fine-tune your starting focus position. Now, if we need all of these to rotate in the opposite directions to support a different lens, we can just swap these connections. And of course, we have this beautiful dial which controls the speed. Now, you might be wondering what happens if we accidentally try to rotate the lens past its limit. Since this time I used the rubber gears instead of an actual cine lens, they will just slip if enough force is applied, so there shouldn't be any serious damage. Now, for the question you're all dying to know, what hack score would I give this? I'm gonna go with a modest 6.5. So I actually took this out a few times with two different lenses, the Laowa 100mm and the Laowa 50mm macro. I ended up taking multiple photos and I actually like some of them. First, let's talk about usability. With the little controller box mounted on top of my flash, trying to put my diffuser on was a little bit of a pain. Having said that, I am a little spoiled because my oversized, goofy looking homemade diffusers are generally pretty instant to put on. With the 100mm operating the camera with a single hand, it was definitely possible, but I wouldn't say comfortable. There's definitely some finger gymnastics there because of that shutter release cable in between my fingers. My biggest problem with that setup was actually the stupid Canon EF2 Micro Four Thirds adapter, which kept disconnecting the lens from the camera. The whole thing worked way better with the native 50mm. It felt like the usability was relatively good, but then after taking some shots, I looked at my left hand and it was telling a different story. But did this thing actually work? For pretty simple handheld stacks, I would say that it worked well. But for very deep handheld stacks, I would say that it also worked well. This is 183 frames and not a single missed frame. There's no way that with my skill level I could pull off a stack this deep using manual focus lens without the help of this thing. Now, what does this mean for you? My long-term hope and desire for this channel is to provide you guys with some solutions, hopefully some alternate solutions, not the same stuff that everyone else is doing. But if I fail at that, then at least hopefully you get some enjoyment out of these videos, even if it's just from watching me fail. Now, has this whole thing been a total failure? Absolutely not. It was a step forward, and it reassured me that this was not a stupid idea. Now, this was obviously very experimental, but if there's enough demand for me to make a detailed tutorial on how to build a simplified and more polished version of what you saw today, I can definitely do that. You would have to harass me about it in the comments section though. Having said that, we've only scratched the surface of what's possible. And for me, this is only the beginning. I've already been working on versions 3A, 3B, 3C, which are way more ambitious, way higher usability standards, much less cables, less buttons, maybe no buttons at all, if I get it right. I've actually paused the development of this so that I can get caught up with making videos for stuff already built ages ago. So there should be more future videos about newer versions of focus bracketing systems for manual focus lenses. And I'm still trying to figure out the best way to bring this stuff to you guys. Some things can easily be shown in tutorial form. In some cases, if I can build components or software that I can easily share and distribute to you guys, then that I might try going that route. So next video coming in, I don't know, probably a month or so, which raises a question. If I don't know, how will you know? Well, we do have the technology. Thanks for watching.